Hey there everybody, it's Mark Curley. I'm back with another How to Draw video. Today we're going to be learning how to draw a manga bad guy. And just to give you a little heads up, I'm testing out new equipment today using a microphone, an actual separate microphone for the first time. Hopefully that'll improve the audio and help me deal with some audio issues that I've been having. And you can see I'm testing out a new technique here with printing out a piece of paper from my computer that has a dot pattern, a sort of grayscale dot pattern on it, and also this little word balloon here, Doko ikunda, which is what the bad guy's going to be saying. Where are you going? Takes on a sort of added menacing feeling. But first of all, let's go ahead and put down some basic guidelines so that we can get onto the real drawing. Alright, well, we've got enough of the basic guidelines in place. I want to start moving on to some of the details of the face. Let's refocus the camera, get closer in on the eyes. Alright, so we're going to start working on the eyes here. I guess the first thing I should do is do the irises. And the key thing here, I'm trying to create this sort of sinister look, and achieving that, for me, it means getting the irises well underneath the upper eyelids, to the point where the pupils are kind of half covered. And this is going to help us make him, he's going to be smiling while wearing is he wearing? He's wearing these angry-looking eyebrows. Wearing them like clothes, man. Anyway, this line here is going to be the fold of the upper eyelid. I'm giving him these sort of heavy eyelids, so that means creating a fairly wide space between the line of the upper eyelash, I guess you'd call this one, and this fold of the upper eyelid. Going to do the same thing over here. And now it's time to start drawing these eyebrows I was talking about. Now, one thing I need to just sort of caution with this is, the very idea of doing a video called How to Draw a Manga Bad Guy is maybe going to leave me open to criticism, because of course there's so many different ways of drawing a manga bad guy, and maybe I'll have to be creative with the title of this one. Really, I looked at a number of different manga bad guy type characters and came up with at least some principles that I could apply to this one of my own creation that I'm sort of coming up with today. Now, notice how this eyebrow here is sort of curving, and generally eyebrows of manga characters are not very thick, certainly not hairy, bushy type eyebrows, but for this guy I think it's going to add to his look of menace if I give him the sort of Jack Nicholson sort of getting thicker and wider as they reach this upper edge, almost having like they have little horns or something. Eyebrows with horns. You do have a creative way of describing things, don't you, Mr. Critty? Anyway, so we get this, the curve, and the way I'm doing it anyway, these sort of peaks that come up at the edge. Getting a little bit of a hook down here as it reaches the middle of the nose, or the bridge of the nose. And I'm going to add just a couple of lines here that just sort of indicate this space between the eyes and the eyebrows. All of this I'm going to be inking later on, so you can treat all of these as just sort of penciled preliminary lines. I want to give him the sort of bags under his eyes. It's going to add to that sort of sinister look. And maybe now it's time to move on to adding a little more detail to the nose. So I'm going to put a couple of lines here. Generally the nose in manga characters is not delineated very much. It's not, you don't call a lot of attention to it. Sometimes it's a little more than just a dot. But in the case of some of these bad guy characters, very often they will put a shadow underneath it like this one. You could have two lines here. You could have a second line. I kind of prefer to just have one line for the bridge of the nose. Now it's time to move on to the mouth, and as you can see, I've made it sort of lopsided, like he's smiling, but one side of his smile is raised higher than the other, and that creates this effect of a sneer, which of course is not limited to manga. You see, sneering villains throughout the history of probably anything, plays, movies, what have you. But notice these lines that I'm putting, these sort of smile lines that I'm putting around the edge. Now, I think we're all taught as kids maybe to put these smile lines onto smiles, but manga characters generally do not draw them. And when you put these lines onto a character, it really calls attention to the wrinkles and makes them look kind of villainous. So I would watch out for that if it is not your intention to have a bad guy character. I wouldn't put these lines in for the smile of your average manga protagonist. Now I'm going to start building up the cheekbones. Give this guy some very sharp, delineated cheekbones. Again, something that is generally not drawn on most. I mean, do you see how angular all of this is? These are all, to me, sort of hallmarks of the way a villain might be drawn in some manga. Of course, not all manga. This is not the way. This is just a way of doing it. Giving him, outlining the lower lip. Pretty unorthodox for manga characters. There are some varieties where you indicate the lower lip, but when I see these wide, thoroughly outlined lips, I feel like I'm definitely looking at some sort of bad guy character. Now I am going to let's go ahead and do the hair. And I think in this case I should just do it in time lapse. Sorry, I got to save some time somewhere. So I'm going to go ahead and do the hair in time lapse. Alright, so you can see I went ahead and did the ears as well. I don't think the ears of a bad guy really are drawn any differently from those of a good guy. I could be wrong, I often am. Let me know if you have evidence to the contrary on that one. But what I want to do now is pull back, refocus, so that we can draw the neck and the shoulders. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is do a little bit like I did before, get some basic guidelines down in a step-by-step way so that we can move on to the final lines. Alright, so I've got the basic guidelines of the shoulders here, and I'm going to do a few more things here in terms of the face. One is to give him a kind of, this is just a personal preference here, give him a little hipsterish looking goatee. Of course, now I have alienated anyone who watches my videos who happens to have a hipsterish goatee. What are you saying, man? You're saying we're all villains, we're all bad guys, just because of our facial hair? I may well lose some subscribers on this one, and my apologies. But what I want to do here is add a little shadow underneath the chin. This is not necessarily particular to bad guys only, but something that I see in lots of manga is some sort of shadow cast by the jaw against the neck. And this might be a nice place for you to practice your cross-hatching. We get a bunch of lines going in this direction, and then you might add a sort of second layer of lines down here. Of course, all of this will be much clearer when we get to the inking part, which in itself is kind of unusual, right? I hardly ever do inking in these videos, but I thought today I was going to try to do almost like a mock-up actual manga panel. That's why I try to do these dots and see if I could make something that looks like the real deal when it comes to manga. So these, again, these are lines that are related to the musculature of the neck. I'm not going to get too carried away with all that, but I thought I would talk a little bit about cloth here, although it's not so much the subject of this video, but I feel like I'm always hearing from people who want tips on drawing clothing. I find that when I'm drawing wrinkles of clothing, it's composed of lines like this, sort of hooking lines like that. And those two things together are maybe the main things that I'm using for creating the effect of wrinkles in the clothing. Let me show you one thing over here. See if I can just sort of do this on the fly. And that is to create, I'm always doing this as a technique. I'm going to erase a little here so as to create a, what would you call that? Protuberance here on the edge of the, breaking up the contour of his jacket or whatever this is. And once you get that there, what I'll do is I'll make a second line that comes up and does not quite connect to either of those two lines. And that's a little technique that I use for suggesting it's a little bit overdone maybe here, but giving the feeling of there being some kind of wrinkle there. Basically, I think we've got everything in place, and I can start to move on to the inking stage. I feel like he could probably use a few more strands of hair, so I'm just going to go ahead and do that. Let me know what you thought of this video, this idea of trying to do something that looks like actual printed manga. This is not the way that I actually do. A lot of my work that's done for my books is done in the computer. And I suppose someday I could do one of these videos that is somehow screen capturing or whatever, and you see the cursor moving around, doing things, but I don't want to lose the human touch of my horrible, ugly-looking hands drawing the pictures. I like the feeling that I'm talking to you guys and connecting with you guys, and you somehow have a sense of me really being here using, not everybody has access to expensive computer programs, art programs, and so forth. So anyway, let me know what you think about this video, and I'm going to go ahead and move on to the inking stage. I'm going to do most of it in time-lapse, but maybe stop periodically to give you some tips. Okay, so I did all that in time-lapse, unfortunately. Maybe I can do a separate video that will be more focused on inking, but my main piece of advice for you is when you're inking the hair, make sure that you're doing that with really quick, confident strokes of the pen. If you really slow down, you're going to end up with these sort of wobbly lines that really don't have that graceful look that most manga people want the hair to have. What I'm going to do now is also very unusual. I'm using a kind of a brush pen because I feel like this illustration looks kind of unfinished to me. It has what I call a coloring book-like quality, as if it's waiting to be finished with color, and so I'm brushing in some black. Maybe this guy's wearing like a leather jacket or something here, and unfortunately it may mean that I'm sort of obliterating some of my earlier ink lines, but I do it just as an experiment. The last thing I want to do here on YouTube is be accused of kind of doing the same thing over and over again. That's kind of a fear of mine, that I'll fall into a rut. And people say, Crilly, every time I watch one of your videos, I feel like it's the same old thing. So I'm doing my best to come up with new methods to teach and new styles of art to do here. So I am not a big expert on using brush pens like this. I don't know if you can see that as I fumble with some of these lines to get them to look the way I want them to. I know a lot of people swear by them and are able to do amazing things. Me, I'm more used to using an actual brush with watercolor, and I'm not so much, I don't know, with watercolor you can sort of build toward your finished line, whereas with ink, as always, ink it's there, man. Once you lay it down, there's no erasing it. You can sort of correct things with white paint, almost like whiteout correction fluid type of a deal. But, especially, one of the reasons I thought I would teach you guys how to do this on a printed out sheet of paper rather than on a video screen is I thought you might be able to use it for creating one-of-a-kind original works of art that you could give to a friend or something like that, and they would know that, apart from the dots and maybe text or whatever that you did by way of the computer, that it really is a one-of-a-kind, never to be reproduced by anyone else. In any case, I think we're reaching the end of this. I may do a few little touch-ups in time-lapse, but otherwise I believe we are at the end of this process, and I can just come back maybe to wind the video down. Alright, well, there's my video on how to draw a manga bad guy. Let me know what you thought about it, especially of this whole technique of trying to create an authentic-looking final panel of inked manga art. But for now, let me go ahead and thank anyone who has supported me by getting my books. You are the lifeblood of my family, for real. We got Brody's Ghost, we got Miki Falls, and we've got my How to Draw book, Mastering Manga. But maybe that's all the time I have for today. I'll go ahead and lay down the pencil. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you found it useful, and I'll be back with another one real soon.